I think a lot of physicians, again, have this sort of limiting belief of, I can't start a big company like this. Well, yeah, you can. You're smart enough, you're capable, you can do it. And you can do all of that at the same time. You can make a profit and take good care of people and run an ethical business. It just takes a physician who's willing to step up to the plate and do it and take the risk.
Welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast, the show where we teach you how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want.
Doctor!
Now, here's your host, Dr. 𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗍.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Physicians and Properties Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. 𝗪𝗪𝗍𝗍, and this is the podcast where I teach you how real estate and entrepreneurship can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want. This podcast episode is full circle. I was a medical student, and Dr. Stephen Bishop, who is joining us here on the podcast, was the clerkship director back in 2016. So it's so cool 10 years later to go full circle and have you on the podcast. Dr. Bishop is a board certified internist. He started his career in academic medicine at the Medical College of Virginia, or VCU School of Medicine, rose to the rank of associate professor and then associate chair of medicine. Then he transitioned into private practice, and he spent the next 5 years in a large concierge practice before he launched his own direct primary care practice in 2025. He's also the CMO of Commonwealth Sterile Solutions. We'll talk more about that. And he's an avid real estate and Bitcoin investor. So we have a lot of incredible things to talk about on the podcast today. Stephen, full circle, so great to have you here. And thanks for calling in from Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I'm excited to see you again. It has been a long time, and you reminded me that I'm aging as well. The gray hair is filling in. And I was telling my son earlier, I said, I'm going to be on a podcast with one of my former students. And he was like, wow, you're so old, Dad. Like, yes, thank you. Appreciate that.
I felt the same way when we were talking about it. And I was thinking back to those days, good times back on internal medicine, and really enjoyed it, really loved inpatient medicine. And I think, family medicine for me was like such a beautiful blend of everything. And so it was a great time on clerkship with you. So I appreciate that back in the day. Let's go ahead and start kind of with your origin story. And so for people who are meeting us for the first time or meeting you for the first time, give us a little bit of insight why you got into medicine, what that looked like for you. We hit a bit of that on the introduction, but I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, I grew up my whole life wanting to be a doctor. Like a lot of kids, I met my pediatrician and really kind of fell in love with my pediatrician and what good care he took of me. And I kind of looked up to him, throughout my growing up years, and just thought to myself, gosh, I really want to do that for a living. I want to take care of people. I want to help them feel well and do better and live longer. And so I really just always was drawn to medicine as a career. Never really considered any other options, honestly. I didn't know what I was going to do if I didn't get into medical school after I got my biology degree. And luckily, we worked out. And I got in, did all my undergrad in med school at UVA. And then, like you said, I came over to VCU, which is home, Richmond's home for me. Grew up here, met my wife here, and we came back and did training there at VCU and then joined the faculty and really loved academic medicine. It was great. Got to teach people, got to learn and see so many amazing things. I mean, you remember working at VCU. I mean, there's nothing you'll not see at VCU Hospital. It's an amazing place to learn. I still have a lot of friends that work there, and throughout the pandemic, and just saw some incredible things. Got to do some incredible medicine, and I got an opportunity, in 2019 to switch over to private practice medicine and spend a bit more time doing medicine as opposed to administrative and teaching work, and really enjoyed my time at Partner MD, where I was a director of wellness programs and a primary care physician there for 5 years. And then finally got to scratch the entrepreneur itch and open my own practice last year when a group asked me to become the chief medical officer of a pharmaceutical startup. And I needed to leave my concierge practice, but I didn't want to leave medicine. And my chief medical officer at Partner MD made me swear not to quit practicing medicine as I became a pharmaceutical company officer. And I told him that I would not, and I would keep practicing. And so I've done that. And all along the way, from, sort of 2013 on up through right through the pandemic, it was heavily into real estate investing and some other things that we can kind of get into all of that too. But it's been a great journey. I've learned a ton about myself, about patients, about taking great care of people, and about how to run a business, which, we don't get to learn about that a lot in medical school or residency these days. So it's a skill that I'm glad that you are bringing back to the profession. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thanks. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I agree. VCU was such an incredible place to train. And I mean, I can't think of a better place to train. Really, really enjoyed that. But I also did not get the entrepreneurial education or how to run a business education there as well. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to share with others and have these discussions. Stephen, I'm guessing at some point you probably started to feel like there was more available than the traditional physician career path. And I feel like a lot of physicians feel trapped in that identity of like, I'm just a doctor. Did you ever wrestle with that as you transitioned more into the CMO role and starting your own practice and kind of taking a step back from full academic medicine? I feel like a lot of physicians feel trapped in the identity of I'm just a doctor. Is that something that you ever wrestled with as a CMO of the pharmaceutical company and transitioning more into direct primary care and less full-time academic medicine?
It's a great question. I think a lot of physicians do really fall into this trap of like, I'm a worker bee and I do my thing at the hospital or at the clinic, and that's all I really can do. And I think a lot of physicians forget that they are really smart, talented people who can pretty much do anything they put their minds to, and they are trained for leadership. They're willing to take it and run with it. And so I think that a lot of physicians are just afraid these days to take a little bit of risk and kind of branch out to some other areas, because I think a lot of it really comes back down to finances and managing household finances. There's a lot of fear around risk taking in the medical community because so many physicians are trapped in debt for medical school. And then, once you get married and you buy a house and have kids and all that, it just, the obligations start to expand pretty rapidly. And I think people start to feel trapped in this idea of I have to have a 9-to-5 W-2 job or I'm going to be up a creek and not feed my family or whatever. And, the beauty of a lot of the new technology, the fact that you can get on access to a podcast and learn about pretty much anything you want these days, combined with a physician brain, you can do anything. You just have to be willing to put in the little more extra time, which doctors are good at. We're smart people. You can figure it out, put in the time, figure it out, get things in order. And I think that's really just physicians need to be just reminded that they are the type of people who can do these things. And, we let people with far inferior training and credentials run major health systems. And we work under their leadership every day. And, that's crazy. To have physicians sit around thinking, well, gosh, I'm not qualified to do X, Y, or Z. Yes, you are. You are more than qualified to figure it out. You just have to take out the mantle and run with it.
How would you like to build real estate cash flow without dealing with tenants, toilets, or late night maintenance calls? This episode is brought to you by Rent to Retirement. If you're a busy physician or professional who wants passive income and long-term wealth through real estate, Rent to Retirement has been helping investors do exactly that for over 15 years. They offer fully managed turnkey rental properties in some of the best markets in the country, including opportunities priced up to $40,000 below market value. Their properties have delivered average projected returns in the 15 to 20% annual range. And in some cases, you can get started with as little as 5% down. The best part is, these are often A-class properties generating $500 per month or more in passive income. And their team, they handle the heavy lifting, including property management. Thousands of investors have used this strategy to generate portfolios, creating over $10,000 per month in passive income. To learn more, click the link below in the show notes or visit renttoretirement.com. And be sure to check out episode 70 of the Physicians and Properties podcast, where I sat down with CEO Dr. Zach Lemaster to break it all down. Yeah, I agree. I think it's just a limiting belief. The physician mind is such an incredible thing. And all the skills that we have both in the hospital and clinic translate so well to entrepreneurship. into investing. And so I think, you hit the nail on the head there. And I couldn't agree more. I was going to ask you, but you kind of answered this, if you think it's more of a competence problem and an educational problem or more of a mindset problem. Anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of both, right? Like it's certainly a competency problem because we get so focused on the medicine, which we have to be during training. We're very narrow and working on, mastering the medicine part of what we do, which is very time consuming. So you get sort of tunnel vision on that. And I think we forget there's all these other things out there. But it is very much a limiting belief or like this scarcity brain type of thing where, I've worked so hard to get to XYZ point that I don't want to risk it to, take a step off the path to start a company, start a business, start a practice, because what if it doesn't work? And then all these years I've, spent building this foundation might be at risk. And I think the reality is that the risk is much smaller than what's perceived, because, even my wife, when we were talking about starting my practice and doing this other stuff, she looked at me one day and she said, "What are you worried about?" She's like, you're a doctor. The worst thing that happens is you go back and get a job somewhere.
Yep.
That's the worst thing that's going to
100%.
happen to you. And I'm like, that's absolutely spot on, the correct thing. It's not like you're going to become unemployable as a physician just because you took a year or two to try to build a business. You'll be okay. Your family won't starve. You'll be all right. So,
Yeah, I agree. A lot of times folks, their biggest fear is their present day reality. And it's exactly that. It's like there are no shortage of doctor jobs. My phone will probably ring 2 or 3 times during this podcast. That's, some sort of jobs that exist out there. And so there's plenty of opportunity, and you only have one life to live. We shouldn't be, so scared of that we're not chasing after our dreams, whatever that may be. And you've actually lived kind of multiple versions of medicine now, from academics to concierge to DPC, leadership, investing. Let's kind of talk through that progression. So I guess kind of first for academic medicine, you mentioned some of the administrative overhead and so forth was kind of frustrating for you. What was that like for you? I guess both pros and cons of academic medicine then you transition into concierge.
Yeah. So, I mean, the major pro of academic medicine was, again, I got to see and interact with a lot of really cool people and see it interact with a lot of great patients with some amazing pathology. And, so I'm getting ready to do some, PRN hospital work for a local hospital now. And I told them, I was on faculty at VCU for 10 years, and they were like, "Oh, you've seen everything, then you're going to be fine here. It's not a problem." So you never lose that experience, which is really cool. But it also, gave me some time to, reflect on kind of building a good foundation. And probably like a lot of physicians, I got sucked into white coat investor many years ago, around 2013, right after I finished residency. 𝗵𝗆𝗍𝗍's website and his book and all that influenced me heavily. And I started being very aggressive about investing, getting debt paid down, thinking about, alternate ways to increase income outside of just my job. And so around 2013, we started purchasing some single family rental homes. We did basically the BRRRR method. You probably are familiar with the buy, rehab, refinance. And we did that for 6 properties over the course of about six years or so. And it was great. Actually we did it with my mom. She was super helpful. My mom's an accountant and, helped me deal with some of the finance and tax issues while we were working through all that stuff and coordinating the repairs while I was working my day job. She would be out there talking to the contractors, which is great. Awesome. So we did that. We did that together for a few years, and those things laid a really nice foundation leading up to 2019 when I got the opportunity to move over to private practice. And, that set us up very well. Right when COVID hit, things were getting obviously very busy, and I had decided to basically, pivot from the real estate just because of the time commitment. So we sold those properties at a good time and rotated all that capital into Bitcoin for the most part, which turned out to be another great time to get into a new type of investment.
For sure.
And so we could talk about that, at some point during the discussion too. But that time in academic medicine, gave me a lot of clinical exposure, gave me some time to spend building a good financial foundation, making sure that our house was literally in order financially, because you never know what's down the road. And I didn't want to be one of those doctors in my 50s, still wondering how I was going to pay off my student loans and trying to pay for my kids going to college and everything else. So I wanted to avoid that going in. So we got aggressive about all of that. And, as time went on, I got a couple of promotions and ended up being, associate chair for education and clerkship director. And those were amazing roles. I got to learn some really cool stuff about management, about leadership, about how health systems work behind the scenes. But it really came to a point in 2019 where I was spending about 70% of my time on administrative issues. And, it's not that those things aren't important. It's just not why I went to medical school, in the start. So, I was talking to my wife about it over the course of several months and some other folks at 𝗵𝗇𝑐𝑢. And I was like, I don't think this is long-term or what I need to be doing. I need to be taking care of patients. And so I pivoted and joined a concierge practice in town, which was a good experience. So that's kind of my experience in academic medicine. And it was a great experience. Would not change it for the world, but it was the right time to sort of transition to the next path.
That's great. Yeah, I know we have those, stepping stones in life that we got to take, and the journey changes, and that's completely reasonable. What drew you to concierge medicine besides the patient care? What did you like about it over your time that you were practicing there?
Yeah, that really was the main thing, and the ability to kind of focus down on lifestyle and prevention medicine. I had gotten fairly well involved in one of the weight loss clinics at 𝗵𝗇𝑐𝗽 with Dr. 𝗪𝗍𝗏𝗏 toward the end of my time there at 𝗵𝗇𝑐𝗽, and really wanted to focus on lifestyle and prevention. And when Partner MD contacted me, the role for a director of wellness job, I really jumped at that because they had all two health coaches at Partner MD and allowed me the opportunity to build something we called Wellness University. We built out 80 plus online courses for patients to take, all about whether, from diet, nutrition, exercise, training, and all sorts of things across the gamut. I got to build that with our team of health coaches across, multiple states. And so it was a really great challenge to build something new, get to build a new program while also focusing on the patient care aspect. At one point in my academic career, I was basically either directly or indirectly supervising, several hundred people. And that's quite a lot to deal with versus going down to supervising like 6 people, which is great. So simplified my administrative life quite a lot. And I got to focus on the patient care while still building some really cool programs. So it was a good transition. And I was there for 5.5 years and have a lot of fond memories and still keep in contact with a lot of folks from my Partner MD as well.
That's great. And you mentioned you learned a good bit about entrepreneurship and business during that time frame, which I'm sure led to help you start your own practice. Was there a specific moment where you're like, hey, it's time to start my own practice. I'm ready to go. This is what I'm looking for from a lifestyle perspective. Or how did that come about in terms of launching your own DPC?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a couple things, that kind of led into that decision over the course of a couple of years. It was sort of a slow build up. We had built the wellness program, which was going great, and everything was, great with the patient care side. But I found myself needing a little bit more time on the personal side. I'm a Christian. I go to Baptist church here in the Richmond area. I spend time doing missionary work and was basically running out of PTO between normal, family vacations and going on mission trips. And so I really kind of decided I needed to kind of make a pivot because of that. Because I've been doing seminary classes through Liberty Online periodically. And so that was all sort of leading in one direction toward more missionary and pastoral work through my church. And then some friends and colleagues were from the pharmaceutical manufacturing world are wanting to start up a saline and peptide manufacturing and compounding pharmacy here in Richmond as well, and asked me to get involved with that. So between my involvement with that and mission work and wanting to have more time with family was sort of the right time to go ahead and start my own direct primary care practice. And the way we did it, I think was really interesting with Valiant is that we decided to make it a practice without walls. So we primarily are house calls and virtual visits. My partner sees a few people in a physical office that he works out of, but primarily we do house calls, which has been fantastic. And it's sort of like I tell patients, it's old school medicine with all the new school technology. So I go with my black bag, my backpack with my cardiac EKG and my butterfly ultrasound and all my stuff. And I just go to their house and we do everything there. And they love that. They think it's the coolest thing they've ever seen. And they're like, wow, the doctor comes to the house. I'm like, yes, this is the way it should be. So I pretty much work out of my home office most of the time, or I'm at the patient's house and I'm seeing them. So all those things kind of led to this. So now I get to work from home. I get to see my family a lot more. My kids are homeschooled, so get to see what they're doing, throughout the day periodically, which is great. Just before I got on this podcast, I was upstairs looking at, a project that my son was working on real quick before we came down here, which is cool. And then I get to focus on, my work at church. So it's been a good transition, a good lifestyle shift, and we're about a year in now, and it's going very well. And we're about to launch some really major initiatives with the pharmaceutical company, and that's been a slower go. I don't know how involved you've been with the pharma world, but it's highly regulated, and things that should take a week take a month, and things that should take a month take 6 months. It's just a lot of time with attorneys and dealing with things like that. So it's just slower than other things. So I've kept myself very busy with my practice while we're building this other stuff. So.
That's good. Yeah, it sounds like real estate development. We're building some projects in Missouri and in Texas, and it's the same thing. It's like, oh, this should just take like a day, and it takes a week. And yeah, I feel you there for sure. That is amazing. Well, before we jump more into that, I do want to ask, like, where have you done some mission trips at? I obviously also a Christian. I love mission work. Would love to hear some of those experiences. I think it's such an incredible opportunity as physicians to be able to go on these trips and experience what healthcare looks like outside of the United States, and be able to learn so much from practicing in that environment and realize like how much we have, but how little you actually need to practice really good medicine. I was thinking about, as you mentioned, your black bag that you take to the house calls, like what an awesome way to do that. And that's kind of similar to when you're going out in the field on mission work.
Yeah, exactly. Primarily I've been working in Nicaragua. Our church works in just outside of Managua in Nicaragua. We go there several times a year. So that's primarily where I've been going. Our church also has relationships in Zimbabwe and then in St. John's and Newfoundland up in Canada. So we had a relationship in Ukraine as well. That's obviously been a little bit more challenging with the war. So we haven't sent a team over there in quite a while since the war started, basically. But so Nicaragua is where I've been several times now, 4 or 5 times in the last few years, and hoping to make it to Zimbabwe at some point here in the near future. But it is it's a very eye-opening experience to go down there and do clinic for a week. And, what I found is that it's, they have some of the same problems that we do and some different problems, so they, in a lot of these third world countries, they have a lot of the metabolic disease that we see in the United States because the food quality is so bad, and a lot of them are in poverty. So pretty much all they can afford is cheap processed carbohydrates for the most part. So a lot of them have diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, all the things you see here in the States. But then they also have the classical third world problems: filthy water, parasite infestations, vitamin deficiencies, and things like that. So it's sort of this very weird experience where you have third world medicine and first world problems all at the same time. And so you're giving people metformin and albendazole to treat their diabetes and their parasite infection at the same time. It's very strange. But over the course of going down there, and getting exposed to that because of what we've been seeing and because of my internal medicine, and you would have the same reaction as a family medicine, physician. We kind of put on this public health hat, when we go down there, and, 2 or 3 visits, I'm sitting there, I'm like, how many times are we going to treat the same people for parasites before we fix the water, Yeah. So we just started bringing out water filters, and cleaning up the water in each of the towns that we go to. And that's been a very rewarding experience. And, the people there, I mean, they're so excited when we bring these water filters that we get it through a group called Hope 21 Ministries. And it's this very cool, just very simple carbon filter, water filter system, no batteries required, simple to use, lasts 10 years. It's amazing. Is it going to filter the water to the point where like you and I, these, lily faced, gringos from America could safely drink the water and not get sick? Probably not, but it's 98% of the way there, and it's going to keep their kids from getting the parasite infections, which is the main thing. So that's been a really learning experience as well. And then, so it's, and along with that, we get to do door-to-door ministry and, meet people where they are and see the conditions that these folks are living in. And it's pretty eye-opening, pretty heart-wrenching. The last time I went, we went and came up on a family. It was a mom, a grandmother, and a couple of kids. And it was just the stories you hear, just heartbreaking. I mean, the son who was married to the daughter, he had been murdered by his employer, and then employer burned down the family's home. And so they had fled to this basically trash pile and built a house out of trash. And that's where they were living. That's where we found them. It was just stuff that you can't even imagine happening here in the US. And, so we're so blessed to have what we have here. And it just makes you realize that life is so tenuous, and at the end of the day, we all need to take care of one another and do the most good we can while we're here on the earth and represent the Lord the best way we can. So it's quite an experience. I highly recommend any physician who has the opportunity to go on.
Yeah, I completely agree. I had the opportunity to go to Zimbabwe for 6 weeks and definitely need to get out there. The people were incredible. The experience was amazing. The pathology was unbelievable. We were at a mission hospital for about 4 weeks, and then 2 weeks we were kind of out in the bush. And it was unbelievable. I mean, when we're talking about, POTS disease and of course a lot of HIV/AIDS, but crocodile bites, a lot of polytrauma, just all kinds of stuff. It was a wild experience. And you're so limited on resources too, that I felt like I learned so much, and it made me such a better doctor being out there and having that experience. And it just incredible. And another thing I always think about every mission trip I've gone on is looking at the just the community and the relationships. Like I feel like in Zimbabwe, I've been El Salvador, Costa Rica, and like they're so materialistically poor, but relationally so rich and significantly happier than we are here in the States. And it's so interesting to see that environment. And I think a large part of that is strongly so community and family based. And we've kind of lost that a little bit here in America. And so I think that is a huge proponent on it. But I bring that all up to say that, it's just such a good opportunity for physicians to go and see and to learn, and just really love that. So thank you for doing what you do, serving in that space and serving the Lord. Let's hop back into, oh, sorry, go ahead, Sid. No,
I was just going to say, it's a really unique experience. So it's really cool, and every doctor should do it. And I'm impressed. 6 weeks in Zimbabwe. That's really awesome.
Yeah, it was an awesome time. It was my fourth year, actually, right before we graduated. Was able to pull that trip off. It was awesome. Yeah, so really, really cool opportunity. Well, I think, one thing I've taken from your story is like your investing kind of laid the foundation that you could feel comfortable with some of these transitions in your life and in your career from a medicine perspective, always with the focus on like, hey, how am I going to serve the Lord? How am I going to serve my family? And balance that. How's the practice set up for you now in order to support things like traveling, mission trips, et cetera? What does that look like for you? And did you intentionally go into the DPC practice with that mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. And my partner and I, so Dr. 𝗍𝗵𝗀𝗀 is my partner. He also trained at VCU and was an infectious disease specialist as well, and is internal medicine trained, and to pivot back into primary care. And so he and I started talking about this, a year and a half ago or so. And he was like, I really want to go back to primary care, and, I'd love to work with you to do that. So he's also a believer, and we built this out together. And I told him, hey, I'm going to basically disappear a few weeks a year to do mission work and some other stuff. If you're cool covering, let's set it up that way. And he was like, absolutely. I want to do the same thing. And so we set it up with the two of us, and we're keeping our panels very small. So much smaller than you would typically find at a direct primary care practice. So we're only going to take 100 patients each at the max. So it's quite smaller than you would typically see at a DPC practice where a lot of folks have maybe 400 or 500 patients. We kept it intentionally low, and we were able to do that for a number of reasons. A, because of practice without walls model, our overhead is very small. Very little overhead. We found, so I'm happy to get into all the details of, business structure and things like that, but kept it very low overhead. So we could set it this way to keep the panel sizes reasonable so that coverage is not really a problem, so that we could do this work and do these other things, go on vacations with our families, and just do fun things too. Like I was talking to you at the beginning, I went with my family to Disneyland, Paris a few weeks ago, and that was a great experience. And being able to do that and have the time and have my partner be able to cover for me without it being too much of a burden was a huge blessing. And so we set it up intentionally this way so that we could do these things and have the practice still be financially viable and successful. And so we're about 56% full after 9-10 months, which is incredible. And we'll cap out at the 200 and we'll stop there. And that'll allow us to still do the work we're doing, and take the time with the families that we're looking to do, and while also working on our other roles, in my case, the pharmaceutical business, and in his case, research work that he does as well. So yeah, we absolutely went into it with that mindset.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's a lot of fear that folks have about starting a DPC practice is, oh man, like I'm always going to be on call and I'm never going to be able to take vacation. I think the beautiful thing about it is exactly what you mentioned. You can structure the clinic around the lifestyle that you're looking for. It may require you to partner early, so you do have that coverage, but there is a great opportunity to do that and practice medicine how you want to, see the number of patients you want to. I would wager your house calls are much longer than your typical, private practice visit. So you can really work on that preventative medicine and the wellness and the things that you really enjoy as well with patients, which is a huge benefit too.
Yeah, I'm usually there at least an hour, and I've got a number of families where I take care of the whole family at this point, or it's mom, dad, and some teenagers. And so I just go over there and spend half a day and we see everybody and we talk about, everybody's stuff from start to finish. And it's a really cool and rich experience, and you get to talk about everything. And you say, do you actually have your albuterol inhaler? Is it expired? Is it not expired? Oh, well, let me go check. It's in the kitchen. Okay, go check, and we'll wait.
That's awesome.
It's really cool. It's really cool.
Yeah, and you're able to meet them where they are, see this is the environment that they're living in. Like, hey, this is a senior who has mobility issues who lives in this row house that's 3 stories. Like, hey, how can we best going to help them with that? So yeah, I love that. That's such a cool way to do it. And as you mentioned, kind of takes a lot of the overhead out, which allows you to have more flexibility. Yeah. Let's pivot now, if you don't mind, to talk a little bit more about Commonwealth Sterile Solutions. So what is the business? What does your role look like? And what are you guys working on?
Yeah, so for the moment, I'm serving as primarily the chief medical officer. I'm an interim CEO while we go through our fundraising rounds here over the next few months until we have finished that. And then we will hire our soon to be permanent CEO when he's ready to leave his full-time gig. But Commonwealth Sterile Solutions is a company that we are building because we are trying to reshore the manufacturing supply chain for a lot of different pharmaceuticals, but primarily our end target is saline and sterile water products. So we import a lot of saline every day from other countries to run our healthcare system, which you probably know. And most of our saline is made in 3 very large factories in the US. And if any one of them go offline, we lose at least half or more of our saline production overnight. A couple of years ago during Hurricane Helene, the Baxter plant was hit and 60% of the saline production went offline overnight. And it was a crisis across the country. And so our end goal is to do that. And as we have done our research and figuring out how to do this, we are trying to build a decentralized manufacturing model where each manufacturing hub is much smaller than these giant, enormous billion-dollar plants, but also in a way that makes economic sense. And so what we're actually building is a vertically integrated system that goes all the way from offering patient care for injectable and infusible products all the way back to the sterile fluid backbone. So our as we're calling it internally, our tip of the spear, our first brand launch out of this Commonwealth Sterile Solutions is going to be something called 𝗣𝗵𝘆 Health, which is a telehealth company for injectable peptides, injectable infusible products for metabolic health, for longevity care, for POTS treatment as well, infusible fluids for POTS treatment. We will then build backwards from there, the supply chain around 503A compounding, 503B compounding, and then eventually the sterile water manufacturing. It's a really cool long-term vision project. Everybody in the company have a long-term vision for improving the security of the supply chain for our nation and our neighbors. And most of the folks that are working on this too are also, again, fellow believers. So we have a very faith-driven approach to building this company around integrity, transparency, just being kind and doing the right thing, not only for each other, but for the patients. And so we're starting with the patient experience with this telehealth brand and then building backwards all the way to the true sort of manufacturing side of the hub at the other end. And it's probably a 10-year project to get it all built. But that's what Commonwealth Sterile Solutions will be. 𝗣𝗵𝘆 Health's our brand. It's probably launching in about 3-4 weeks. But it's been really exciting. I've learned way more than I ever thought I'd learned about the FDA and regulations around food and drugs and regulatory law around manufacturing. And we've spent a lot of time with attorneys. And it's been really, really interesting and really eye-opening to see honestly, the frightening gaps that are there in the supply chain that keep our health system functioning.
Yeah. Wow. That is so cool. Yeah. There's definitely a lot of vulnerability in the supply chain, especially as it relates to healthcare. So that's awesome to hear that you guys are working on solving that. You mentioned you've learned a lot. What are some other things that you've learned being in a startup environment that maybe most physicians have never thought about or got exposed to?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing in startups, again, I think a lot of physicians, again, have this sort of limiting belief of, I can't start a big company like this. Well, yeah, you can. You can. You're smart enough. You're capable. You can do it. And, the first few times you're in some of these rooms or some of these meetings, it's easy to get intimidated, like, oh, I don't know anything about this world. But you get up to speed pretty fast and you can take pretty significant leadership in not only formulating, but leading organizations like this. And I think it's actually a major reason why our healthcare system and health in general in the United States is in such a bad space, is because our profession has abdicated the responsibility to lead these types of organizations over the last 50 years. And I think it has led us down this very unfortunate path where we have people running healthcare organizations that really shouldn't be. They should be led by physicians. And we have a lot to say in terms of technical knowledge, in terms of leadership, in terms of making sure that these companies are managed not only profitably, but for the benefit of patients. And you can do all of that at the same time. You can make a profit and take good care of people and run an ethical business. You can do all of those things at the same time. It just takes a physician who's willing to step up to the plate and do it and take the risk. It is complicated. It is difficult, and it does take a lot of time. And I've worked for free on this company now for a year and a half, 2 years. Probably will work for free for this company for another 12 months. And that's okay because I'm able to do it because I built out these other systems to provide an income for my family while we're building all this. So it's really, again, it goes back to those early days, 2013, when I'm just learning about, what is stock investing? What is a 401k? Building that foundation right out of training gives you more choices and more optionality so that you can take on these roles and these risks.
Yeah, I love that. I completely agree. It's given you so much opportunity that you maybe wouldn't have had otherwise, or you would have felt a lot of pressure to, stay full-time in medicine and try and figure out how to work all the rest of these things in the margin, which probably then would have impacted your family and made it much more difficult to do. So that is awesome. And, I think about my first day sitting in the Egyptian building in med school as my first day. I didn't know jack about medicine. And look at how much we learned in 4 years. And then residency, like it's the same thing for entrepreneurship. I mean, it's learning medicine is really hard. Learning entrepreneurship is hard, but it's totally doable. And I hope that if anything, this episode has encouraged folks to don't be afraid to take the leap. You can totally do it. It's certainly possible. Let's pivot a little bit more in the last few minutes to your investing and how you kind of laid that framework and what that has looked like for you. So you mentioned getting started in BRRRR investing and single family rentals. What was that like for you getting started, partnering with your mom, working on those? How did that give you some margin going forward?
Yeah, it was great. One of the best things we did was find a local banker to work with. And so the way we did our deals was we would find a property that needed quite a lot of work for a low cash price. I would basically, and this is the beautiful thing about, again, being a physician is you have a relatively high income, especially if you've got a stable W-2, and you can go to the bank and say, hey, I'd like a $100,000 line of credit so I can buy and flip a house. And they say, okay, sure, sign here. Sure. Basically. And as long as you are a good steward of your finances and watch your pennies, you can do this safely. So we would buy the house. We would then spend a little bit of extra money fixing it up, getting it ready to go, take it back to the bank, same bank, and say, hey, Mr. Banker, remember the house I bought that looked like it was about to fall apart? I made it nice and pretty and shiny and new again, and it's worth X dollars now. Can you refinance it for me into a mortgage and give me back all the cash I spent fixing it up and the loan I took out from you initially and trade that in for a 30-year mortgage? And they would say, that's a great idea, Dr. Bishop. Sign right here. So you pay off that little line of credit, you pay off the money you spent fixing it up, you get a nice stable mortgage on it, then you put a tenant in it. We did that 6 times. And so basically at the end of the day, you have very little of your own capital in each of these deals. At the end of the day, if you do your numbers right, and it doesn't always work out perfectly. So there were certainly a couple where at the end of the day, I had to put in, maybe $5,000 here or there to make the deal work. And that's fine. That happens. You have an unexpected plumbing issue at the end of the rehab and you got to pay for it out of pocket. And that's fine. I'm sure you've had similar things happen. And then you put a tenant in it, and as long as you've got a good tenant procedure, I actually hired a property management company to do this for me because, again, I was busy working and doing other things. And so they would find the tenants, screen them, manage the rent collection. And we did that for 6 houses, and it was really good. And then we decided that, about in 2019, 2020, the market was doing well. It was a good time to sell and pivot because I was leaving academic medicine, wanted to free up some time, needed to spend some time focusing on that new job at concierge practice and a little bit more time with family. Pandemic hit and that kind of blew everything up. That was, unforeseen. So we did unwind all those positions and sell those houses for good profits. I then took all that and parlayed it into a Bitcoin investment in 2019, 2020. Not all at once. I wasn't that brave. I did leg into over the course of 2-3 years into Bitcoin. Still heavily invested in Bitcoin, but that investment over the next several years actually set us up, which is sort of like everything. You let it sit, you let it compound, you wait for the market to do its thing. We're living life, getting through the pandemic. And when the time came for me to make this next transition, I was able to actually use a fair bit of that investment to pay off my student loans, remaining balance before I left the concierge practice and start this practice. So I was able to kind of eliminate the rest of my student loan and take that worry off my plate. And so again, like all these financial things, they set you up to have more options. It's not about being rich, per se. It's about optionality and being able to have more choices. And so we were able to do that last year as we made this transition and, really minimize our burn rate on the personal side to a pretty low number, basically just the mortgage and then a few other bills here and there. So our burn rate was pretty low. And so it gives us breathing room. And there's other lifestyle decisions we've made that, every doctor's got to, make their choices. We homeschool our kids. After the pandemic, we were a public school family. We homeschool now. It's been great for us. And, it's a lot cheaper than private school. And so we've chosen not to put our kids in private school. So that's, again, huge money saver that we don't have, so that we can have this, again, lifestyle optionality. And we can take the kids to Disneyland Paris and do that other stuff rather than spending it on private school tuition. So, really, it's about making the right choice for your family and making choices that give you more choices at the end of the day.
Yeah, agreed. And I think, that optionality, that freedom, that is what everyone's looking for. And the moral to the story too, is there's so many different ways to achieve that and do that. And again, we're talking about a large period of time. 2013 was when you started learning about this and laying that financial foundation. And now we're here in 2026, obviously. And so there's been a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of effort that's gone in to give you that optionality. And that's important for folks to understand is It's not like a get rich quick overnight scheme to financial freedom. And if folks are trying to sell you that doesn't exist. But having the opportunity to chip away and get more and more freedom or optionality over time is what's going to be massive. And then you're going to look back in a decade and go like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. And it really wasn't that bad. And I'm so glad that I did. And so I would encourage you to just get started.
Yeah. What is it? There's a quote. It's what is it? Something around like it takes 10 years to become an overnight success or something. Along those lines.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I like that. It's true.
But yeah, it's super boring. Investing is boring, and it should be boring, and that's fine. And that's the way to be. Get rich quick is not the thing to do. Just plug away at it, while you're living your life and building your skills in other ways as well. So, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Stephen, this was a great conversation. I think that your story is such a good reminder for physicians that we're far more capable than maybe we've been led to believe. We can lead, we can build, we can invest, we can create careers that, align with what we really want and how we want to live. So I'm really grateful for your time coming on the podcast today. And it's been so cool for me to hear your story, what things have looked like over the last 10 years. And I really appreciate that. Where could folks reach out to you if they want to learn more about what you're doing or connect with you?
Yeah, for sure. If you want to learn about our practice, it's valiantmenshealth.com. I'm on Twitter at GenMedDoc. I'm old enough. I actually got that handle way back in like 2012. So I'm GenMedDoc at Twitter, and that's, and then CommonwealthSterileSolutions.com is another place you can find stuff that we're doing. So yeah, thanks for having me, Alex. I'm so excited to see how well you're doing and to check in 10 years later.
That's awesome. Yep. Thank you so much. We'll include those links in the show notes. Once again, this has been Dr. Stephen Bishop and Dr. Alex 𝗏𝗏 with another episode of the Physicians and Properties podcast. Signing off. Hey, real quick, if you're still listening to this, I'm assuming you got value from it. So I need your help specifically. My 2-year vision with this podcast is to help 100,000 physicians learn how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want. There are 2 main ways that a podcast grows. One is through ratings and reviews, and the other is word of mouth. If you can please leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as send this to 1 to 2 friends that you think would get value from it, we can reach the physicians that we want to reach. Thanks in advance, and talk to you on the next episode. Please note that the information shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only. It should not be considered financial or medical advice. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the host and the guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense or the United States Air Force.